From January 1st of 2024 to December 31st of 2024, I've spent roughly $14.7 million with Google Ads alone. And in this video, I want to break down every single major thing which I learned along the way, which helped me scale to this level of revenue profitably at a 5.39x return on ad spend. Now, one thing I want to clarify before I actually get into the major things I learned is spending this amount of money on Google Ads is the easy part. You can easily ramp up Google Ads spend by 2x, 3x, 4x every few weeks, and within a few months even, you can be spending a lot of money, even more than 6 figures per month if there is enough monthly search volume. However, doing all of these things profitably, that's a different story, and that is exactly what I was able to crack now working with over 500 brands just within the last 5 to 6 years alone. But that brings me to the first major thing which I learned about Google Ads through this level of spending on a yearly basis, and that is revenue and ROAS scale very rarely happen simultaneously. Now, what I mean by this is I speak to a lot of brand owners consistently where when they come to me under my agency or marketing, or when they're just talking to me, they want to scale their revenue and their return on ad spend at the same time. They ask me, Sri, what can I do to increase my revenue by 2 times, 3 times while ensuring I stay profitable, or even in the best case scenario, while I increase my profitability? And the reality is, the honest answer I always give them is, you really can't, and you shouldn't even try to. The reason is, every time you try to scale your ad spend with Google Ads, what happens is the pocket of the audience which you were targeting initially, maybe it was only 10 people you were targeting, but now because you increase the ad spend, that 10 people turns into 20 people that you're targeting. And over time, that goes from 20 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, so on and so forth. So as you are increasing the size of that pool of audience per se, what's happening is now more and more people who may not be as high buying intent are getting added to that audience list, because previously Google was currying the best quality audience with the limited budget you had. But now that you're spending more money, Google has more leeway to go out into the markets and to test within bigger pockets of the audience. More often than not, this will basically allow Google to add more window shoppers to your audience, or more people who are just not going to convert. And Google doesn't do this on purpose. It's just trying to test bigger pools of the audience now that you're giving it more money, and as a result, scale your brand on the broader level instead of on the nitty-gritty basis. So what happens is, technically, your return on ad spend actually starts to stay the same, or even in some situations go down when you're trying to scale. So the solution to this, and the best way to scale with Google Ads from my experience at least, is you want to take scaling within phases. Phase 1 should be focusing on what your brand is lacking right now. If right now your ROAS is low, you should be focusing on scaling the ROAS. If right now your revenue is low, then you should stop focusing on ROAS and focus on revenue. From here, then the next step of the phase will be determined on where you started. If you started by scaling the revenue, next phase for your brand is scaling the ROAS. And the other situation, if you started with ROAS, next step is revenue. So you want to be scaling one, then the other, then go back to the first one, and then go back to the second one every 14 to 21 days. This is how you truly achieve a decent amount of scale with Google Ads, by taking it through phases. But the second major thing I learned about Google is the algorithm does not really care about your money. Now, you might be shocked by hearing this. I know I was when I first realized this situation. And this kind of actually is a little bit of a freeing moment as well, because now you don't have to worry about how much your competition is paying Google to rank high. Because I know a lot of these competitors might be big one brands such as Amazon or eBay or Etsy or Target or Walmart, so on and so forth. And the reality is, no matter how big your brand is, you cannot technically compete with these multi-billion-dollar companies. So not getting favored just because you're spending more money is actually a big freeing moment. But that brings me to the main question. What is then Google looking for? Well, the reality is, what the algorithm truly cares about is that 60% of the algorithm wants you to be basically running a brand with high merit. What that means is a lot of the things which go behind you winning auctions with Google are determined based on things like the quality score of your ad accounts, how good your service is within the back end, how long people are staying on your landing pages, what's the CTR of your product images, what's the overall landing page experience. All these things basically tie into your brand's merit and how good of a brand you truly run. If you don't really care about your customers, if you don't really pay much attention to the service you provide to them, well, what's going to happen is that's going to showcase directly to Google on the back end level, because now people are exiting out of your landing page very quickly, or they're not even clicking on your ads to begin with. Well, now you are not satisfying the first 60% of what Google wants to see, and as a result, you already start to qualify less and less for the Google Ads algorithm. Now, the other 40% is determined by the bids and budgets, but keep in mind, more of this allocation is for your brand's merit versus the budgets and bids. So if you leave out 60% of the equation, well, already your brand is not in a good situation to rank, and now you really have to force the bids to be higher. You really have to spend more money to even get a chance of ranking within the Google Ads auction. So the long-term perfect strategy should be, number one, focus on a solid business foundation from all sides and angles. It's no longer just about having the perfect kind of bidding strategy, perfect campaign approach anymore with Google Ads, because everything else ties into how good that strategy which you implemented actually performs. So kind of the way I would approach this if I was running a brand right now, or what I basically tell all of my clients or my agency or marketing, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But essentially, what I tell them is focus on the KPIs and the backend system first, and that will automatically kind of spread out into your Google Ad strategy. It will be sort of like this domino effect, where once you take care of your KPIs and your backend system, your landing pages are on points, you're satisfying customers, the dominoes will start to fall in your favor, and that will slowly fall into the Google Ad strategy and make it gain momentum, essentially. So you want to, again, focus on the back end and focus on building a very strong business in 2025 to truly scale to the next level. But third thing that you want to understand is efficiency is what Google is after in general. Now, a lot of brand owners, what they believe is Google Ads is all about spending money. That's why when they try to scale, they try to add more campaign types to scale. They try to basically run more budgets to whatever they're currently running to scale in that situation. And although on the surface level, this seems to be making the scale happen, this seems to really kind of be pushing everything in the right direction, what happens is this is not training the algorithm to go after the right things. And eventually, your dominoes will come crumbling down against you, and it will be very, very difficult to stop that from happening. So essentially, when I say adding efficiency and maintaining efficiency is basically most important, what I mean is you want to make sure whatever ad spend you are currently doing is efficiently getting spent on the right placement, on the right networks, and on the right campaign types. Now, this brand right here on my screen is the perfect example of this. We just started working with this brand basically 1st of April. As you can see, before this, the ROAS values were drastically differing from each other. One day it would be a 5x ROAS, before it would be 1.32x ROAS, then it would go up to 3x, then it would fall back down to 0.54. But there was something that happened after April, which of course we did because we just started working with this brand under my agency, that not only made this ad spend go down, but the ROAS actually went up to a 9x within this time period. And the beauty about this is this brand actually did not lose much in revenue at all from the previous days and the previous time that what they were doing. So essentially, there's still a lot of extra revenue to be calculated right here, but previously the revenue had gone down to $900, $800. And what we did is, with adding efficiency, not only did we lower the ad spend by almost 3x, but what we did is we increased the revenue slightly in just yesterday. And again, this change has only happened 2 days ago, so we still need time to optimize, so on and so forth. But already adding efficiency is doing a very drastic change to the ROI. Why is this? Well, the thing is, now, instead of this $100, $200 getting spent on the wrong placement and the wrong campaign size, they're getting redirected towards the highest quality traffic possible. We're spending lesser amounts of money to have a bigger impact, the same level of revenue or higher, which should be your ultimate goal. Because once you are able to establish this level of momentum initially for a few days at least, what happens is over time, Google catches on to why this even happened, and it will start to showcase your ads more and more to the people that are similar to these ones with the higher ROI values. And this is how you gain momentum and actually are able to scale ROAS very, very quickly along with your revenue. Of course, you can't do it side by side as we discussed earlier. But now that brings me to the next thing. What does adding efficiency even mean with Google Ads? This could mean adding content suitability settings in the back end of your ads account to build it a strong foundation and to ensure it doesn't go out on the wrong placements with Performance Max campaigns. This could also mean adding certain asset groups to your Performance Max campaigns or removing the bad ones. This could also mean removing bad products from your campaigns or excluding them and giving them their own approach with better bids. This could also mean improving your ad copies for your search campaigns. There's so much things you could do to add efficiency without spending a single dime extra. And if your account is not where you want it to be right now in terms of revenue or profitability, I highly suggest you add efficiency first before you even consider scaling the ad spend in any way, shape, or form. But fourth thing I learned about Google Ads through this $14.7 million in ad spend is AOV is the number one metric with Google. So far, I have not seen any other metric, doesn't matter if it's conversion rates, CTRs, search impression share, click share, doesn't matter what it is, I have yet to see another metric be as powerful as average order value. Because the reality is, if your average order value is high, you automatically get the ability to spend more money than your competition or how much you were spending previously to acquire that same customer. And as a result, you're now able to test more things. You're now able to put more strategies out into the market to see what works versus what doesn't. And this just makes it easier for the algorithm to now further find better winning strategies, better winning approaches, which helps you long term with the return on ad spend. So if your average order value is not where you want it to be, that's the number one thing you should be focusing on by adding bundles, upsells, downsells, whatever you can to not only increase the AOV, but get more people through the door as a result. Because what ultimately happens is as you have more interesting products bundled up together, more upsells, downsells, people now actively want to see what they can spend their money on. Because keep in mind, if somebody buys from you once, they're already in the buying intent at that point and they trust your brand enough to already buy from you. So all you need to do is just double down on that momentum and gain more traffic. But fifth thing I learned with Google Ads is external changes impact the Google Ads algorithm significantly. Now, I'm going to go on over to an ad account right over here, two ad accounts specifically in the same exact niches, selling almost identical products. But if you see right here, these are two separate ad accounts for two separate brands. One ad account does about $250,000 per month in revenue, and the overall return on ad spend, if we look right here, is a 7.74x, whereas the second one right here is in the same niche, selling almost identical products, but it's only $65,000 in the last 30 days, and the ROAS is a little bit less, 5.29x. Why is this? Why is it that we are implementing similar approaches here? The AOVs are almost the same, but even then, the ROAS values differ significantly, the scale differs significantly. Well, the reality is this second brand right here with lower scale is struggling with external business issues. They're dealing with payment processor issues. Their credit cards keep going over the limits. So now Google Ads is not able to charge them for the ad spend. As a result, their ads get paused for a day or two before we have to restart them essentially once the credit card limits are fixed. In addition, they're now in the process of changing the URLs. They're going from WooCommerce to Shopify, and as a result, we're having to deal with all of these different changes in the back end when it comes to the product feed, adding things, subtracting things, etc. So this has nothing to do with the Google Ads side per se. It's just external business matters, and unfortunately, those external business matters are negatively impacting this ad account, preventing it from truly scaling to the next level. So what that means is for you, you need to ensure you're not letting your external business matters go too deep into Google's algorithm and too deep into Google's work, because this can set you back significantly, make it difficult to maintain momentum with Google. You want to always ensure that you don't let these small things such as credit card limits going over or anything like that impact your Google Ads results, because they will negatively impact it and it will make it difficult for you to scale long term. But sixth thing I learned with Google Ads is the flow of traffic determines literally everything with Google Ads. I see so many brand owners, they're worried about the perfect campaign approach, perfect product testing approach, so on and so forth. The reality is none of that matters if your budgets are not getting allocated properly to any of your strategies or campaigns. What I mean by this is ideally, you want to be implementing the 80-20 rule with your campaigns, which says 80% of your budget should go towards cold traffic campaigns, 20% should go towards retargeting and branded search campaigns. It's literally that simple. The goal, however, with this 80-20 rule is to increase the gap between these two values. So make it go 85 to 15% cold traffic, then 90 to 10, then 95 to 5. Over time, we are scaling more and more towards cold traffic while decreasing the overall reliance on retargeting and warm traffic. That's because your account is getting smarter. It knows exactly who the perfect cold traffic customer is, which is what we wanted to achieve. And this should be the main goal for your brand, not just the perfect testing strategy, not just the perfect campaign strategy, because that will eventually come along once you allocate the budgets properly. But seventh and final major thing I learned with Google is the less you touch the strategy, the better it will generally perform. I've made a lot of case study videos on my YouTube channel, which you can check out, where we literally didn't touch the ad account for months, not because we're lazy, because there were external business affairs going on. We were focusing on another brand for the client, not that one. And whatever the case might be, we literally didn't touch the campaigns for months, and come back later, the campaigns were actually performing much better than they were when we were touching them every single week. Why does this happen? Well, the thing is, over time, if you have built a very strong foundation for your Google Ads accounts, the campaigns just can become smarter and smarter and smarter. Again, going back to the domino effect, one domino falls on the other, and this momentum just builds up and builds up over time, where now it becomes unstoppable, which is exactly what you want to do with your ads account, which is why you should try to avoid making changes, especially if things are going well. But if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.